There's a little bit of play in these rear bearings, so I'm going to replace them. How's it going, guys? Wheel bearings on the 690. I had a quick look, but I couldn't see any other videos on YouTube on how to do this specific bike with the cush hub and that. So I thought I'd video it myself. We'll muddle through it together, find out what's involved. Generally, wheel bearings are, all very sort of a similar process, but there can be slight variations, so we'll see. Alright, so I'm going to start with the Sprocket Carrier first, the cush hub. Apparently there's 4 bearings. You've got 2 in the hub and 2 in the Sprocket Carrier as well. Now this is the bearing kit I got for the back wheel, guys. I'm not in any way endorsing this product. I have no idea if they're any good. I got it from these guys, Moto or whatever the hell it is. I think it's World's End Moto. Oh, they're here in Australia. They had this kit in stock and it was only $30-something. So they are probably, I'm not going to say definitely, but they're more than likely cheap quality bearings. But we'll see how they go. I may be surprised. It's certainly a lot cheaper than, official KTM stuff. And of course we only need 1 seal with the rear wheel on the 690. Looks like we've got spacers there, so I'm just using a small screwdriver. That's coming out quite easy. So we can get onto the inner ring of that other spacer now. Yeah, so that is the inner spacer. Oh, this grease smells rotten. Okay, the next phase is to get these 2 bearings out, and by the look of it, to me they both come out of this side here, because there's no way that one can come out of this side. Oh well, I guess we just hammer them out. Alright, next idea, the homemade bearing press here. We've got a bit of a gap in there between the wood socket. I don't know if this is going to work, but if they've got any chance of coming out, surely this is it. Yeah, we have movement. So you don't really need a bearing puller, but hammering out both, because there's no gap between those bearings, they're both just sandwiched in there. Whacking them both out with a hammer, it could be doable. You could end up breaking your alloy Sprocket Carrier, so this is probably a safer idea anyway. Less impact. Seems to be working. Yeah, one of those bearings is pretty much out now, so I'll pull it out of the vise and see how we're looking. I tell you, it's not easy to hold all of this and the socket there, getting it all sandwiched in the vise. In fact, it's quite difficult, but a second person would definitely help. Oh, okay. So yeah, there you go, one of the bearings is out. So whacking that second one out, hopefully should be pretty easy. Alright, there you go, guys. I'm just using a 30mm socket to whack those out. Anything big and round and solid will do the job. So yeah, that's all there is to it, guys, for the cush hub. It's just 2 bearings side by side, no circlip holding them in. Just a matter of brute force to get them out. Now the actual wheel bearings should be easy enough. We'll just get rid of these cush rubbers. It's kind of a good idea to watch someone else doing these things first, because you just don't know if there's flanges on the spacers or circlips hidden in there somewhere. Anyway, that's the spacer. We'll get that out the way, and then we'll prise that seal out. Don't want to put too much pressure on this ABS ring, so I'll try and just twist it. Actually, a safer idea might be to just take that ABS ring off for now. Well, KTM do love their Torx fasteners. go. On seal, it is due for the bin. I mean, you know, I've seen worse, but it's not great. We've got a circlip there, so get that out first. We've got some of these circlip pliers, they do come in handy, but no, these are just cheap ones. They're probably not gonna do this real well. It's quite a big circlip. Yeah. Alright, I got that circlip out finally, not by any conventional means. Screwdriver and a pair of pliers. So now I've got to figure out which side I'm going to be able to knock this spacer sideways. Yeah, sometimes there's a flange on these spacers that stop them moving side to side. Now my rudimentary wheel bearing removal tool is generally this 3/8 inch extension, socket extension, down in there. Try and get it on the edge, catch the edge of that bearing. It's not going to yet. If you have to hammer it, you have to hammer it. Once that spacer can move side to side, that's when you start moving it side to side and hit the bearing on either side, so you're not just whacking it out on the one side. Get out, bitch. Righto, that's one out, and there's our spacer. Bit of corrosion going on there. So there's no flanges on the spacer. As I said, sometimes, well, on the Tenere 700 there's a washer on the outside of this that stops it from moving inside that hub on one end. So you've got to make sure that you're whacking the correct end of this to the side to get to that bearing. Very easy to get the professional bearing removing tool and whack that other bearing out, clear access to it. But I'm going to see if I can figure out this bearing puller. You still don't need to use a bearing puller to do this job, obviously. I just want to see how it works, see if it works.
2 seconds later.
Ah, fuck it, I can't be bothered with this bloody thing. Oh, shit. Done. Oh man, honestly, that grease smells like sewage. Anyway, that's that. I don't know if that's actually... Oh, never mind. Yeah, that's that's just a plastic spacer. I think it was the 500 EXC, had a plastic spacer in there. Don't know why KTM can't make their freaking hubs the right size. So yeah, that goes on the sprocket side. I'm just going to go ahead and clean everything here up, guys, and then I'll come back to you. As I've mentioned in other videos, you don't want to be smashing on these bearings themselves. So what I generally do is I'm going to cut this shell off and use this bearing outer shell as something to drift the new bearing in with. I'll show you why we cut this once we get to that stage. Anyway, this is the bit of the bearing that we want, the outer race. Obviously, you know, the reason we cut it is so that it can come out of here a lot easier. You know, if you use this to knock in another bearing, if you use the whole bearing as a solid unit as a drift sort of thing, there's no way you're going to be able to get the bloody thing back out. But once you've got a slit in that outer race, it goes in and out pretty easy. You can whack it all the way in like that, and it will still come out by hand. But yeah, as I mentioned, guys, I don't know if these bearings are any good. They look suspiciously like all balls bearings to me. Just going to pop one open and see how much grease is in there. Yeah, there's a bit of grease in there, more than the all balls ones, but not heaps. I don't know, some people reckon it's a bad idea to fill these up fully with grease. I don't know. I might whack a little bit more in there anyway. I think it can't hurt. But the more grease that's in there, the less water that can sit in there, as far as I'm concerned. There you go, basically just sort of filled up some of the gaps on that side. I'm not going to go crazy and do both sides. I'll just, yeah, a bit of that will push across to the other side anyway once the seal goes on. Bit of extra grease can never be a bad thing, I don't think. Alright, before I knock this first bearing in, I'm just going to put a small, like just a thin smear of grease around this on the inside of this hub there. Alright, the usual story with installing these bearings, guys. The hammer should only ever come in contact with this outer race. If you're putting, or if you're hammering on this inner race, you're going to be damaging the bearings themselves. So very carefully tap around the outside. You do want to try and make sure you're hitting it in fairly straight too. Now we can use our little drift. That bearing is pretty much seated there on the far side. Now we just whip out our bearing shell here. Hopefully it comes out. Sometimes they still need a bit of gentle persuasion. But yeah, once you finish doing your bearing change, I recommend hanging on to these. I've got a set of these for the T7 as well. Keep these outer bearing shells for this job, so you don't have to cut through the old bearings each time you do a change. Anyway, I'll get the other one. So you can remove these rubber seals, obviously, if you're very careful with a nice clean flat blade screwdriver, something that's not too sharp. It's not going to damage the rubber. Just carefully get under it, pop it off. You don't want to bend it too much because there is a metal washer in there. If it gets too deformed, it won't sit on properly. As I said, some people are going to be jumping up and down at this, too much grease in there. But whatever, you do you, I'll do me. I'm only putting this on one side, I'm not completely filling up all of the voids in the bearing. Alright, same deal. Let's hit this guy in. Easy peasy, then we'll be onto the wheel bearings. You can tell with that change in sound, once the bearings are home. There we go. Pop those spacers back on and that guy's done. So yeah, that spacer of course was on the inside. Hit that one in gently so you're not destroying your bearings. Beautiful. Okay. So yeah, this guy now, I'm not too sure if you're supposed to grease this. I guess not, because those are sort of sealed anyway, so I'm just going to whack him in. That is one Sprocket Carrier done. Right, wheel. I've greased up my bearings. Now guys, if you've picked up, some decent Japanese quality bearings like, Koyo or NSK or whatever, you probably won't need to put extra grease in. These bearings, as I said, are unknown quality, unknown origin, so I'm just hoping to extend the life of them a bit. I've put a bit of grease inside the hub here just to stop corrosion again. Of course, we can't forget our KTM special plastic washer here, and behind the bearing on the sprocket side. And I'm going to have to cut another bearing, one of these old ones, to make something to press these guys in with. Done. Now before you do the other side, stop. Do not forget your spacer. I'm going to whack some grease on that. As you saw before, it was pretty corroded on the outside, even though it is aluminium. So I'll grease that up, drop it in. So you might not think it's that big of a deal for getting the spacer, but trouble comes into it when you can't, once you've whacked that new bearing in there, it's all but impossible to get it out, get your new bearing back out without pretty much destroying it. So yeah, if you forget that spacer, you're pretty much going to be buying another bearing. Alright, I'll grease around here. Put these to the side for next time I'm doing the wheel bearings on this guy. Alright, we'll get this seal in. Should be pretty easy. Okay, very important, grease the seal. These seals don't last very long without lubrication. And the wheel spacer goes in. Oh yeah, nice and tight. Good idea to thread lock these if you took them off. Okay, cush hub rubbers. Cush hub. And we're fit to black. So yeah, if you're wondering when you should do this job, you know, when the bearings are going to be due for replacement, you know, that's always going to vary depending on a lot of factors. But this bike has 22,000 Ks on it. As far as I'm aware, it didn't sound like the last owner had ever changed the bearings, so quite likely these are the originals. So yeah, as I mentioned, there was a little bit of play in this back wheel. It may have flogged out on the next ride, it may have lasted another 5,000 Ks, you just don't know. But bearings are fairly cheap, and it is you know, one preventative maintenance task that I'm more than happy to do. It's not that difficult, and hopefully you think the same thing after watching this video. No more play. Perfect. There you have it. Wheel bearings, rear wheel bearings done. The front ones are okay for now, so I'm not going to bother with those, but when I do, I'll definitely do a video on it. Hopefully this has helped somebody out there, because as I said, I couldn't find any specific videos on the 690 rear hub, rear wheel and sprocket carrier, so it's always a bit of an unknown with different bikes. All I would maybe recommend is have an offset vise handy if you need to press those two bearings out of the sprocket carrier. At least, you know, it's a fairly small unit if you need to take it over to your mates or whatever to use his vise if you don't have one. But yeah, if you've got a press or something, you know, you'd be right. Bearing pull up, if you've got a better one than I have, it'll probably work. But yeah, there you go, all done. I'll put a link in the description to the Slinky whatever bearings. You know, if you after those, they are cheaper than OEM. I generally go to my local bearing shop and take the measurements for the bearings in and get those guys to get them. They're usually pretty cheap as well. But this time I just couldn't be bothered dealing with those guys. I just went and ordered these online. They came like in 2 days. Yeah, again, can't recommend them because I don't know how long they're going to last, but yeah, if you're looking for a cheaper option. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Stand by for more 690 vids. Catch you later.